Good afternoon, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'd like to introduce my extremely important and impressive panel. We might as well go from left to right. We have directors from the UK living in the US. We have directors from France working in France, or a director. We have a director from the UK who very often works in the US. And we have, well, God knows where you can say you come from, Iran, Venezuela, Switzerland, France, the United States, you name it. Barbet Schroeder has been there. Next to me, yes, I did. Laurent Cantet from France. To my right, Westmoreland from Leeds originally and now Los Angeles. On my extreme right, Stephen Frears, who needs, I hope, no introduction. I did a little maths before we got started on this, and on this panel we have the winners of 3 Independent Spirit Awards, 1 Sundance Grand Jury Prize, 3 Oscar nominations, 2 Golden Globe nominations, a Prix Jean Vigo, a Prix Louis Deluc, which no surprise who won that, 4 César, 3 Evening Standard British Film Awards, 1 Venice Gold Medal, 2 BAFTAs, 1 Berlin Silver Bear, a Berlinale Camera, and a David de Donatello, and last but not least, and I think this deserves a round of applause, a Palme d'Or from the Cannes Film Festival for Laurent. Our subject, rather dauntingly, is fiction, and as Stephen said to me at lunchtime, we could spend the whole hour talking about what fiction is. But what I think we should do is talk, each of my panelists separately on, all of them have to some extent worked both in fiction and in documentary. Barbet has made both fiction films and documentary films. Wash has made fiction films and documentary films. Stephen frequently makes films about real people in a fictional format. Laurent has said it's okay if I say that his style is documentary-like. He's not very happy about it, but he's okay for me to say it. So the question really, I mean, fiction, it's not true, so anything we say this afternoon, don't believe a word of, because it's fiction. But essentially, cinema has become compartmentalized in the last 30 or 40 years. The need to determine, is this a documentary? Is this docudrama? Is it pure fiction? Is it fiction based on reality? If it's based on reality, how true is it? I think I'd like to start with Barbet, who has crossed that boundary more often than most of us between fiction and documentary making. When you approach a subject, if it's a documentary, if it's a fiction film, do you approach it differently?
Yeah, well, hello. Hello, hello. Hello. So it's very simple. If I'm making a documentary, I will look for every possible way to exploit the dramatic possibilities of the story telling, and I would now, recently, I even started with the Terror's Advocate to use film music as in a documentary, and to use it dramatically. When it's revealed, for example, that Vergès was with the Palestinian for the 7 years when he disappeared, one of the most sanguinary and intelligent and charismatic Palestinians, Wadi Haddad, then somebody says that at one point in the film, to underline when it's said, I put some music that was already, the theme was already placed before in the film. So this is a use that is completely a use of film fiction. And on the contrary, when I do a fiction film, I absolutely have to believe that what is in front of the camera is real, to a point that is absolutely ridiculous, because I cannot do a period piece, because it would cost too much, because I would be so afraid that it's not completely exact, that it would cost twice the price than if any other director would do it, because so I just say no period piece. No science fiction and no period piece. I never done it, and I will never do it, because on another type of movies I can convince myself that what I have in front of me is true, is documentary. So that is the thing, and I always think that a great movie is always, in a way or another, a great documentary. The worst it can happen, if it's not anything of a documentary, it will always be a documentary on the acting of the actors. It would just leave a testimony for the future, a documentary that will document the acting of the actors. Okay.
When you said that when you're shooting a fiction film, you have to be convinced absolutely that everything that appears in front of the camera is real. I never thought I'd find myself saying this, but define real.
Real, that, for example, somebody like Hitchcock, I was very amazed to discover that when he was doing Psycho, which really is not a real movie, but he needed to know what was the real places where she was driving before reaching that house. So he knew he was in Phoenix, he knew the street where it was placed, he had to have in his head the placement of all the things, and he sent an assistant to do the road and to take photographs all along the way, because he wanted to know how the way it looked. He needed to have a grip on the reality of his story.
Laurent, when you were shooting Entre les Murs, the film for which you won the Palme d'Or, you used real school kids. You worked with them over a long period of time. How did you make the step from where they were improvising, playing around, being themselves, mugging, as they do quite a lot, to become the characters that you had written? Because it was, I think, a completely written script.
It was, even if they didn't read it before. But we spent a whole year, a school year, every week, meeting for 3 or 4 hours, improvising about themes of some scenes that I had in mind. And so I would film all that with my small camera, sometimes change the dialogues in my script, even if they would never read it. And during the shooting, I don't know exactly how it happens really, except that we all remembered everything that happened during this year of working together. And I could tell one of them, remember you said this thing, can you say it again? Or, and they were so involved in the process that they were the characters. They were not themselves. They were the characters of the film.
But you had presumably a story arc that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Was that set in advance? Did you have to make sure that what they did took them on that same, what your improvising school kids did took them on that same path?
Right, after 1 year working together, I don't know what I told them or what they understood by themselves. It's something that is a sort of mystery for me. And there were also one important thing in the I don't know, is it dispositif in the
setup? In
the setup of each scene, was that the teacher, who had been a real teacher in real life, also wrote the book on which the script is based, and he was so used to be in front of a classroom that he could lead them where we were expecting them to go.
Okay, so effectively you set something up with your actors. You drew on what they'd done, and you manipulated it to the point where it followed the story. I mean, I'm sorry to use that word, but it is essentially, I think, what we're talking about here, the way you reshape reality.
Yeah, sure.
And
No, I accept the
what
word,
you've
yeah.
done is you've made a retrospective documentary in some respects, because
Exactly.
the book on which it was based is about exactly what happens in the film. The actor plays himself in the film, but you couldn't have made it as a documentary, but it could well have been a documentary.
That was even a sort of misunderstanding when the film has been released, because a lot of people thought it was a documentary film, or that I wanted them to believe that it was a documentary film. And especially teachers, for example, were very shocked by what the film was showing, because they thought it was just one part of what's happening in a school. And yes, it is just one part. It's the only thing that interested me in this film was the interaction between the children. It was not just looking the way they were learning French. So we choose moments of the year of a school year, which is that, yes, since people believed it was a documentary film, they thought I was giving a sort of global image of school, which was not the case.
When you said you wanted people to think it was a documentary,
No, that's what people...
people did think, yes, but by the time the film had come out, surely the audience would know this was a feature film. And does that affect... Because I had the very rare privilege of seeing the very first screening of the film in Cannes, where you have absolutely no knowledge of what the film is going to be. It's virgin territory. That's never going to be recaptured, that moment. Or is it recaptured for every audience that sees it?
No, because even 6 months later, people still spoke of a documentary film.
Wash, I think you better grab a microphone. You're probably best known for a film which is actually screening here, although, as you said, it has already been in wide release for some time. Still Alice, a wonderful film with an extraordinary performance from Julianne Moore. But you also made several documentaries. Now, when you get to that moment that any filmmaker gets, what do we do next? There are always probably 5 or 6 projects simmering under. What is it that draws you to one, let's do this as fiction, let's do this as documentary?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I think one of the great things about being a filmmaker is this ability to look into the world and follow your interests. And really, when I look at the films that I've been involved in, each one has taken me like into a different world. When I was making Quinceañera, I was, hanging out very much, learning a lot about the Latino community in Los Angeles. When I was doing Still Alice, I spent a lot of time with people with Alzheimer's. And each year that it took to make the film became like, marked by that special experience. So when you think of the next project you want to do, I guess there are several competing ideas. And you go to the one that interests you the strongest, that the circumstances of fate are also pointing you towards, like certain things happen outside your control that point you towards certain things. And then when you approach that subject, I think it's pretty clear you have an instinct, whether it would be a documentary or a fiction film, based on the circumstances of that subject. Obviously, with documentary, it has to be a story that is unfolding at that moment or can unfold at that moment. For a fiction film, it's about going into your own mind. I suppose documentary is more like looking out into the world. Fiction is perhaps more, you go into your own mind very deeply at the origin to find out exactly how it's going to play out.
You said something there about the moment when you lose control, when things go beyond your control. Is that a particularly creative moment? Because that can happen both in documentary and on a film set in fiction, that things aren't going the way you planned they were going to go. They're going the way a particular actor or a particular setup points them towards. It
is interesting. I think in documentary you do feel the forces of fate more acutely, I think, because you often don't know how, well, this is making a documentary in the present tense, following someone in the present tense. You don't know exactly how the story is going to play out, and you don't know what revelations are going to come from within the story. So, moment to moment, you can shoot for 20 hours and think this is all unusable, and then there can be 2 minutes that gives you a whole vital scene that you didn't really see coming from somewhere else. With a fiction film, I think you more have an internal model, a roadmap of where it's going to go. But then it's still important to be open to the discoveries along the way that the actors and the circumstance and the drama bring to you. And I'm not a fan of over-rehearsing scenes, because I really like to keep that kind of fresh surprise in the way things play out.
Thanks. Stephen, I've watched your face reacting to some of the things generalizations that I've made. Let me make another generalization.
With horror.
Yes. British social realism is a tradition in which probably both of us, to a certain extent, grew up. Do you feel constrained, strengthened, bewildered, reacting against it? Do you see yourself as in any way influenced by that tradition of the 1950s?
Well, I know how I grew up, but I don't think the films I make now bear any connection to it.
So what do they bear a connection to?
God knows. I listen to you all with admiration. I don't sort of think that way.
Okay, when you take a subject that's about a real person, let's say the Queen. Now that's particularly a super real person in the sense that she is a real person, but is also an image that we all have. When you take on that project, already you have a script presumably to hand. How do you begin to shape that into the film that you finally make? Can you remember?
I'm trying to remember. I think I actually said you have to start with the Queen looking like the Queen. You can't start with her as, with her hair in rollers or anything like that. You have to actually have Peter wrote the scene where she's being painted, and then we did a shot of her with the crown on. I don't think the Queen ever met a stag.
Did you feel, again, I'm using the word constrained, but did you feel constrained by the ideas everyone else has of Her Majesty?
Why would my ideas be any different?
Because you're the filmmaker who has chosen to make a film about her, and if you're not simply recording a day in her life, you're recording a particular moment in the history of the monarchy.
Yes, but the position from which you're making the film is the same as anybody's. Anybody watching the film.
Yes, but the film is not going to be the same as anybody else's. It's going to be your film.
Well, then you're involving things, certain choices and selections and things like that. But it never seemed to me that it didn't. I mean, it seemed to me the film. Well, I don't know how to answer your question. I've given up. I've failed completely. Start again. Ask me the question again.
The idea of making a film about the Queen at a particular moment in her...
Well, it was the only interesting week of her life, wasn't it?
I'm not sure she'd have seen it that way, but...
Possibly not. But I mean, things went wrong that week. I mean, apart from the poor girl's death, she had a bad week. I can't remember another bad week. So you're already making it, say, oh, this is the interesting bit. Let's leave out all of that, and just concentrate on that.
But isn't that what you do with any film?
Yes.
You cut away the stuff that's not essential to your story.
As Michael Caine would say, you leave out the boring bits. Yes. So we were always going to... I was asked if I'd be interested in making this film, which was about the events of that week. The really interesting question is really one you should be putting to the writer. He was asked to make a film about the week of the death of Diana. And he said, this isn't a very interesting week. The only interesting character is the Queen, which always seemed to be the single most interesting thing that was said about that film. He worked out that she was the interesting one. And then he insisted on bringing Blair into it.
in spite of everybody saying, oh no, don't bring him in, he's so boring.
But you managed to make that scene anything but boring. Now, is that down to Peter, or is it down to... No, I'm sure it's down to...
No, it's down to absolutely magnificent direction. What you're not acknowledging is that there is a thing called doing your job well.
I am not for a moment not acknowledging that. I'm just saying...
No, but your film, where did the word documentary come from? Who introduced the word documentary? He described the making of a film exactly the way I would make a film. When you talk about Hitchcock asking to go on the places that whatever that man was called went on, seems to be common sense. Anybody would say that. So I don't understand where this word documentary even comes from. He makes a film the same way I make a film. Mm-hmm. And whether you do it with real people or children or whatever it is, you're controlling something and you're telling a story. What has that got to do with documentary?
Well, what's that have to do with fiction? I mean, does that how...
You've made a work of fiction. You can only call it a work of fiction. Why do you, a journalist, call it a documentary?
Because normally documentary and fiction are the two things that are opposed to one another.
Well, perhaps that's the thing that I pulled a face at.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you.
I've finished.
As ever. Barbe, do you want to intervene in this particular... do you have a problem with the use of the word documentary?
No, it's a common thing that you're dealing with reality, with real moment, real things, and but yeah, as he said, you always end up doing some kind of fiction, and I'm a little bit running out of things. We got to maybe approach it differently. I think that to make a fiction work, you must believe in this fiction. You must believe that the characters are real. You must believe that it's like that. There is a belief that's important, and so if you believe it's a documentary, it's great because it means the things are so real. And if you're moved by those that dramatic. Now, the thing that we should maybe look into is the dramatic construction, because that is one thing that really makes the difference, and that's the work of the screenplay writer very often. And this is a very fine work that can take, in a case of a good screenplay, it takes 1 year minimum to get a good screenplay. That means that there is always nuts and bolts that need to be done, and this is all because you have a dramatic curve, and that you can reveal certain thing at a moment, certain thing as another, and that you end up doing in a documentary. But of course, it's much stronger in a fiction. Yeah. Mm.
It seems to me there are two kinds of dramatic reconstruction. There's a speculative dramatic reconstruction, this is the way this might have happened, and a dramatic reconstruction of an event that everybody knows, like the procession of the...
No, I disagree entirely.
Well, you think there's only one form of dramatic
No, but if I don't know what the Queen's life is like. I wasn't there.
No, but
she didn't ring me up and say, this is what we did. I wore these shoes. It's at best an educated guess. And in the end, the audience chose to believe, or so far as I know, they chose to believe what we said. And always when you make a film, you believe in certain things and you don't believe in others, and you draw a completely arbitrary line. And in your head, you think, oh, I can do this, but I can't do that. But it's very, very delicate and it's very imprecise. But in the end, you believe in what you're doing. But I would have thought everybody, any film director would do that.
I suppose that, well, let's take another example, since keep you, as it were, on side a little bit. Philomena is a story of a real life. quite changed from the book, and probably which was quite changed from the real life itself. How?
Well, Philomena I know this, I read the script and became involved, and then I asked to meet Martin Sixsmith, who the character that Steve Coogan plays, and he started to tell me what had happened, and I was very startled. In other words, Philomena never went to America until we took her there. When they went to Ireland, they immediately found the body of the child, of the dead son. So the whole of the second half of the film was imagined.
Fiction?
That seemed to me its talent, yes, of course fiction. Yeah. That seemed to me what was interesting about it. And I remember because they said at the beginning, a true story. And I said to Pathé, I don't really think you can put this up because in the end I will be asked to defend this and it's not true and it could be embarrassing. So they took it out and then I said, but I do find this very, very interesting. Can I talk about it? And they said, we'd rather you didn't.
Okay, we won't make you wash. Do you want to come in on this?
Well, yeah, I think it is interesting when there's a true story and you're making a film about it, and there's something that doesn't fit into the way the story is working out for you. You should feel absolute freedom to leave it out, bring something else in, create a new character, amalgamate two characters. And the highest allegiance you have as a filmmaker is to making a great story that people connect to, not to telling every factual statement as it actually happened in real life. Because real life isn't a film. Film is a way of condensing real life into an experience that you can then kind of, take with you as a story, and what a story does to you is a way of psychologically connecting to being a human being. So I get annoyed when there's a film that's been reviewed that's about a real life event, and the person writing about it has just gone down Wikipedia and said, well, this didn't happen at this time, and this really didn't happen like this. And to me, that is completely irrelevant, and the film should be judged solely on the quality of the storytelling.
You look like you want to say something again.
Sounds to me as though it's journalists who are under fire.
See, it could at times feel that way, yes. Laurent, when you made, for example, Ressources Humaines, your first full film, you shot in a factory, you used the people who worked in the factory, the management that worked in the factory, and inserted actors into it. Is that a way that you've made all your films, really?
Right, more or less, yes.
Yeah.
Except that sometimes I decide to work with professional actors for certain characters because I feel that it's that I need the talent of a real actor for one character, but I don't have any system for that. I just what I need always before shooting is a very long time of documentation, and this documentation is not in books. It's by meeting people, by making them improvise on the situations, by listening what they have to say from their own experience, and then I try to respect what they brought to me.
So a film is a film is a film is what we're gradually coming down to here. I have to say that the topic fiction was not one that we particularly chose. It was one
But what interests me when I work with non-professional actors is that it generates a lot of accident on the shooting. You plan something, and the guy in front of the camera forget his line or had a moment of emotion that he cannot content, and you have to be fast enough to realize that that's the point and to go on in this direction, and that looks like a documentary work maybe.
But I mean, in Ressources Humaines, it's obviously absolutely crucial that there be big machines working in the background, and that the people working them know what they're doing. So that is a true background that you have placed behind your story.
But sometimes the fact of working with real workers, for example, helped me to accept to go further than what I would have dared to say, because you are always afraid of being caricatural. And when two guys working in a factory tell this relationship with the boss can be even worse than what you say, you go, okay, so go and show me. And I think it helped me to really dare the certain situation.
Babe.
I agree. I mean, the documentation, we're talking about document and fiction, but the word documentation may do the bridge between the two, because there is nobody in his right mind is going to start a movie without trying to document himself, or the screenplay writer does it, or the director does it. Wants to know the maximum possible. And the more he knows, the more he finds ideas that are true and that at the same time are unbelievable. And when the audience sees it on the movie, says, "This is unbelievable, but I feel it's true." An example: the Sonny von Bülow is in the coma, and she is being massaged. She has flowers, she has music and all that. All this is completely documented. People in the coma can hear, so you put nice music. We don't know if they can see the flowers, but they need to be massaged for the muscles and so on. So we didn't think of that first, but then when we learned that, of course, we included it immediately. And that was something very strong. It was a strong sequence. It wasn't even dialogue, it was just an activity. So that's why the more you document yourself, the better. And of course, this is true also about the period piece. The more you know the period, the more you know how the people were actually behaving at that time. And if you look at the paintings and see that there was a tendency to take that posture and not another, that I think can bring also something to a movie. That documentation.
Can I ask you about Amnesia?
Yes.
Which is a very personal story for you.
Right. Well, that is like most of my movies. When I do a movie, I base myself on something that I know. A story that happened to me, a character that I met. And then, of course, for dramatic purpose, I combine the different elements that are all true. They're all taken out of life. That's when I initiate the project. Of course, if I do an American thriller, it's different, although I try to include in thriller personal things. But let's say that in a story like Amnesia or More or whatever, there's other stories like that, where I know the characters that are similar, I base myself to similar stories, and I put them together. For example, in Amnesia, you have the character of the German grandfather of Joe, and his situation of working in a camp of prisoner of labor that was not an extermination camp. And this thing that has never been really addressed in movies, this is all true. And his dialogue about the name of the girls and all that, it's all true. It's all taken from some kind of reality. I don't want to say where, but it's taken. The character existed, and he said he has heard those things. And of course, the character of my mother is based very loosely also on her, and the story also. I mean, there are so many elements that are true, but the movie is not a documentary. The movie is totally recreated. It's a collage. It's a montage of different truths. That's comes down to that. Okay.
Let's move away from this thorny subject of fiction to another F word, festivals. We're at one. It provides an opportunity for filmmakers to discuss films with audiences, which is not really provided for in the commercial setup. I'd like to know how useful you guys find it, starting maybe with Wash.
How useful find the festival?
festival.
The festival or the discussing the films.
The point of contact between the audience and the director, which is made possible by film festivals and Q&As.
Well, I feel that outside of a studio system, for independent filmmakers, film festivals are absolutely crucial. Otherwise, you'd just be kind of floating around on your own. And it's the time where it gets pulled together with, you get to meet other filmmakers, you get to meet audience members, and your film gets tested out in the world. Often films showing at film festivals don't have distribution yet. So the response of the audience and the connection of the audience can determine the fate of your movie. This has happened to me in my life twice. Once with Quinceañera, we made the movie for $200,000. It was all non-actors. No one had heard of it. We would have never, ever got distribution for this film. It had no movie stars in it. But we went to Sundance Film Festival, and the audience is connected with it, and they love the stories behind the film. It just kind of, it took off, and that's how we got distribution for that. And same with Still Alice. When we took it into Toronto last year, we didn't have a distributor, and it was the audience response and the sort of that thing you feel in the room when an audience is really getting into a film that determined the fate of the movie. We got a distributor who put it out immediately. So the festivals and the festival audiences are absolutely crucial for independent filmmakers.
You obviously haven't had the chance here yet to discuss Still Alice with any audiences.
No, not here
You
yet.
will do, I think.
Yes, on Friday.
How have you found the process here, Laurent, with you? Because you've soldiered away night after night with screenings of films from your entire career, which must be a very daunting experience.
It's
And you,
quite strange experience, yes, because you have in 5 days a sort of concentration of 22 years of working, you know. No, what's interesting here is also to recognize people from film to film in the theater, and that you understand that they can build a sort of comment, le mot français, je sais plus. Line between all your films, you know, it's a sort of, and they can after it, you can, when you speak with them, you realize that they can make bridges between your different moment of work. So that's interesting. That's something I've always done a lot. I always go with my film in different festivals and also in France in different cities to speak with people. And what I really prefer is when, you know, you don't have, you just sit in front of people, you just answer one question, and then the discussion is between the audience. And it often happens because people can compare their own situation to what the film is showing, so I think at that moment it's very, very inspiring for me.
Babe, you've worked in both the studio system and independent European production,
Right.
which is, as Wash said, very reliant on festivals
Right.
to reach an audience.
You have the audience in the studio system. It's called testing, and if it's done well, I'm all for it. It's very interesting to discover your film with an audience. I think it's very important, and I think if you didn't have that testing, you'll be completely left hanging in the air with something that may be a bad surprise once you see it with the public. So it's very good to know ahead of time the problem zone, the problem where, the point where everybody starts moving on his seat or coughing. And if you think that they must go through that, it's important for the movie, then you don't touch it ever. But if you kind of agree, kind of said, wait a minute, maybe this is true. So this is the thing. Now, the festival, it's a whole different game, and there is such a thing as a festival thing, a festival film. some film that is made for the festival and not for the public, you know, so that there is such a thing. But the life of a movie can depend on a festival, and it has happened to me many times, in good and in bad, the proof. And when it's the best is when a festival refuses a movie and then the movie becomes a success. But it can happen also something else, that it's refused and it's found to be a great movie much later, or it's refused and it was absolutely right to refuse it because the movie very soon is revealed as a very bad movie. So you never know completely. But I know for me that Reversal of Fortune, for example, was turned down by Cannes because it didn't correspond of an image of a festival film, because he was talking about real people or people who were alive or half dead, and so it was shocking. It was like an exploitation film, and that's why it was turned down. Then I had plenty of those. La Virgen de los Sicarios was turned down in Cannes also, and so on. Yes, it can be devastating for a movie. It can destroy a movie, because if you're not exposed to the whole world, to the whole group of other festivals, to the press, to the world press, you may disappear completely, very quickly, and never make a foreign sale, and just be forgotten. And then you have to trust it's really a long shot that you're going to be rediscovered 20 years later, you know. So it's really a high-risk exercise to present a movie to a festival.
Laurent, winning the highest prize in the constellation of cinema, a Palme d'Or, did that change your life in terms of your opportunity it gave you to make film? No.
No, I think it helped me to make the next film. That's all. The next film was not a big success, so I think I lost my what I get from the Palme. Coming back to what you were saying, I think there's something which is really incredible now, which is that you don't even need to go to a festival to suffer of it. You know, not being in Cannes for a French film is already something that condemns the film sometimes. So it's very difficult, and every filmmaker in France tries to have his film ready for Cannes. And of course, there are only 4 or 5 films shown, and all the others are considered as, right, Frémaux didn't want them. And I think it's something very dangerous for cinema.
I mean, the commercial system is not that different in the sense of films are held back so that or brought forward so they can qualify for Oscar nominations. So it's not a totally different. But Wash, you've kind of sat a bit across the fence with Still Alice. It was a small film with a big star in it. It opened, I think, Sundance. Is that right?
No, Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah.
And what happened? Can you talk us through the kind of experience that you had there at that particular festival with that particular film?
Yeah, it was actually before the festival, the journalists write about, it sounds like I'm picking on journalists again. The journalists write about the hot films, which are going to be the hot acquisitions, and we were not on any of the lists. And we were actually the main sort of traffic of the festival is the first weekend. We were on Monday afternoon, so we were kind of at a disadvantage. But that can be an advantage in terms of festival psychology, because you can, if there's no anticipation about your film, you can be a festival discovery, which can be it's something about a group of people at the festival. The buzz starts around a film and everyone's talking about it, suddenly everyone wants to see it. It can be terrific for the film. Julianne Moore, I think, has had this incredible career of straddling Hollywood studio films and then just really uncompromising independent films. And I just think so highly of her. And the film, she's in every moment, she's in every scene. It's completely from her point of view. So I think what Toronto brought to the film was this sort of moment for Julianne Moore. And this, we just, basically the next day after the screening, the Hollywood Reporter ran this article saying if someone releases this movie this year, then Julianne Moore will be the frontrunner for the Oscar. And we had that before any distributors made a bid on the movie, but that just drove them all crazy, and suddenly we received a number of offers. But it was a condition of ours that we wanted the movie released before the end of the year, because we just knew it was this moment that we had to jump on. We didn't want to keep it in the can for another year and wait until this year. We wanted to go immediately with it, which is quite difficult to pick up a movie in September and release it before December. But that's what Sony Picture Classics did with it.
Stephen, I'm going to try one more time to draw you into the journalistic conversation here. It's very, Wash said that with several that were Quinceañera in particular, there was no distribution in place when he went to a festival. That must not happen often with you, because the setup is the film is usually set up with distribution by the time you make it, but you do also attend quite a lot of festivals, Berlin. Do you find them of use?
Also, I mean, these stories that you all tell, I owe everything to a festival. My beautiful Andrette went to Edinburgh, and my life changed.
But more recently, the whole hoopla that's grown up around festivals and junkets, and
just in my usual unpleasant way, I grew up going to the cinema, as it were, down the street with my parents or with my brothers. I really like just going to the cinema. So I suppose in that sense, I faintly disapprove of festivals, because I grew up at a time when the cinema was quite innocent and much less self-conscious. Then self-consciousness came in, and I'm not 100% sure that it was an improvement. And so I really remember these innocent times when films were just things you saw in a cinema, and now you can't get away from the bloody things.
Okay, we've talked for a while. I wonder if any of you have any questions that you would like to put to any or all of our panelists, or they can choose whether to answer. Yes, can we just, do we have a microphone?
Just talk loud. I think you're better with it. Yeah, it won't reach, so.
Gracias. My question is, when working with actors, how often do you use the line reading element? And what's your opinion on this resource when directing?
Never. It's what Woody Allen says. You hire these people at great expense. They're very, very good actors. Why would you tell them what to do?
Could you repeat the question? I didn't quite. Line reading. Line reading. Yeah, exactly. When you work with an actor, there's a certain amount of trust, and I would never give a line reading to an actor. That would, I don't know, I think that would be very odd. I find most of if you cast a film right, then you can get into a creative conversation with an actor, and everything is just this process of fine-tuning to do with, the different meanings within the scene. And it's really, about just getting into the details. But if you've cast it wrong, I think you just have the most difficult time on earth. It would be a nightmare.
Okay. Can I ask, are you an actor? No. No? Okay.
So, I usually don't even give the script to the actors, so the question is very simple, except for the film I made with Charlotte Rampling in Haiti, heading south, and it was very impressive to see how she works. Sometimes she had problem with some lines, and we tried to understand why, and then she asked me, so I told her, for example, maybe you should have a short stop here. How long the stop? Right? Let's say 5 seconds. And she made it, and it really works. I think it depends on the people you have in front of you.
Yes, I agree with everything that's been said. No, there's one moment, but that's an actor imitating a director, because I just did by accident when in the Reversal of Fortune, when Jeremy Irons meets the lawyer, he comes along, and I had said just before, he comes along and he says, hello, hello, and I had said that, and Jeremy Irons stole it from me and used it, but that's not the line reading, it's just everybody steals from everybody and the movie becomes better.
Mind you, if the actor says it badly, you're allowed to punch them.
Know the feeling. I wonder, do you ever go and sit in an audience of a screening of one of your films, a kind of blind viewing, as it were?
No.
No.
I don't have that sort of courage.
Is it a question of courage?
Yes.
You're not interested to see how they respond to certain
No,
things?
they might not laugh at a funny line or something. No, it's far too frightening.
Good, okay. Have you ever done that, Barbie?
Ever done what?
Just gone into a cinema where one of your films is playing?
Well, when it's too late, I would do it before the movie is finished with pleasure, but when it's too late, what can you do? No.
The thing I'm trying to get at really is that the production process for films has a kind of chasm in the middle. When the film is completed and is handed over to the distributor, the people who made the film no longer really have that much involvement with it, which is the way the industrial system works, and it works reasonably well, but it doesn't quite provide the opportunity for the sort of feedback that I hoped we were going to get, in discussion here this afternoon.
Well, I thought Barber gave you a very good idea. When he talked about testing, the truth is that there's a point, and indeed it's happened to me twice in the present film, where you're made to sit in a room with 400 people, and it's very, very painful, and you do learn an enormous amount. I mean, what you learn is quite mysterious, and it's quite hard to calculate, it's quite hard to explain, but it is very, very good for you. And there are filmmakers who won't do it, and I'm jealous of them, but it is always very, very informative. But his answer was brilliant.
There is a story I would like to tell in this particular context when Mike Leigh had made Meantime and was beginning to develop into a significant filmmaker in the UK. David Putnam suggested that he should spend 6 months traveling around the United States watching what audiences in films enjoyed. Mike, I have to say, dismissed this particular idea with 2 words, but you just said you do see value in that, sitting in with an audience.
I made a lot of films in television early on in my career where, there was a piece of glass and you never had any contact with the audience. And since I started making films for the cinema, I find the audience almost the most interesting part of it. So I would absolutely take David Putnam's position, I think, or I would have a lot of time for David Putnam's position. And it is quite painful. It's a painful thing to learn, the difference between what's going on in your head and what they are thinking.
But a film festival like this one, like Morelia, all power to it, does provide you guys with an opportunity to see a lot of work by a lot of fellow filmmakers. Have you been doing that during the week? Or have you been so tied up with presenting your own films?
Between the presentation of my films and the film I have to see for the competition, it was difficult to, but I saw some films, yes. And I think it's also very important to watch a film. That's also why I like festival. Watch a film you never heard about before. Nobody wrote anything about the film, and you discover it with no preconceived idea, nothing, and that's also what a festival can provide.
Well, we're going to go back to this problem. The real problem is journalists, isn't it? By the time a film opens, oh, you're the worst of them all. By the time the film comes to your cinema,
Okay.
you're so sick of the noise that's been going on. It's ghastly. All you want is not to know anything. Why do you bugger up my innocence?
Can I have this switched on, please? Sorry. Yes. Okay. It's not. I'm not about to attack. I have a question. Festivals and journalists like convenient handles. Okay, like documentary, for example. But another convenient handle is filmmaker or auteur, as the French say. And journalists, and I'm a hypocrite for asking this question because I run an auteurist magazine, but I would like you to say how you feel about the system of, the weight of promoting the film always being on the director when we all know it's a collaborative medium.
I think it's an absolute nightmare. I would much rather it was shared. The audience is only interested in the story and the movie stars. They're not remotely interested in directors. I have no idea why you pick out directors. It was all fine until a bout de souffle.
I've had certain films where it rested on me and my partner, Richard Glatzer, to really promote the film, and we would just go around everywhere, just like beating the drum like a carnival barker to get excitement for the movie. But the experience with Still Alice was great because we had Julianne Moore, we had Kristen Stewart, we had Alec Baldwin, so we've got these three media lightning rods who totally took the weight off us, and we just did one or two pieces, which was so much more enjoyable. So I concur with Stephen. It's nice to have a moment to talk about your film with the press, but then to have the full weight of promoting it feels exhausting.
Anyone?
I'm the opposite. I try to be the opposite of an author.
You're talking about me. I'm the opposite.
Yeah, well, we're competing for that.
Although I'm only actually supposed to be moderating this, I feel I need to respond to this. Some of these comments on the role of journalism in the promotion of movies. To get to say that as a journalist, I feel as much co-opted into the promotional process as Stephen feels by a system of deadlines, by a system of requirements for giving stars to films that are being reviewed, to simply road testing the film for an audience. Then you're quite right, they're interested in the story and the stars, and they're not particularly interested in the reviewer. But the promotional machinery set up by the studios and increasingly by the independent companies means that journalistic quotes are needed, have to be sought. The whole system has to be set up, and we are part of it as journalists these days, more so than I can remember at any period in the last 30 or 40 years. So give us a break. All right, just to round up, do you have to go and do a Q&A? Favorite moments from the Morelia Film Festival? This is a fairly unique film festival. In the sense that it brings people together for opportunities like this, which are not really offered at other events to anything like the same extent. There is an intimacy and an enthusiasm and a size of audience which is at times quite breathtaking. Some of the films shown. What have been your memories of this past week, Babé? No.
Well, I've seen a few movies. I forgot the titles, and I can talk of two that I loved, and I won't talk about the ones that I didn't like.
No.
Right. For me, it's also movies that I saw, of course, and also I think the size of the festival that allowed people to really meet, to talk, and that's something that doesn't happen in so many festivals.
Yeah, this is an exceptional festival. everyone you bump into, you say, oh, how many times have you been here? Because filmmakers, industry professionals want to keep coming back to this film festival. You really brought into a great sense of community here, and it's really well run, and it's so friendly, and it's just great. I was at Shanghai Film Festival about 3 months ago. I was there a week. I didn't even meet the people who programmed the movie. When the film was playing, they sent a car with an intern in it to take me to the screening. I tried to start a conversation and said, oh, you interested in movies? He said, no, I like sport. And there was just this dead feeling at the whole festival, and the few people I bumped into were like, what is going on? And this is the opposite. This is a festival with a real soul.
This, of course, is your highlight of the week.
No, it's a lovely town.
Everything, for a festival, in my mind, everything is in the location. So if you have a city where people are going to keep bumping into each other, and a beautiful surrounding, a beautiful city that is going to start making everybody happy, if that happens to be an 18th century city completely preserved, and that it's preserved, but it's populated by an incredible amount of young people, of students, it creates a unique atmosphere yeah, that is like a recipe for a festival. The worst for a festival is to be in a very big town and in very different locations, that there is no center. You don't know where it's happening. Mm-hmm. That is the worst that can happen for a festival. Well, you know, there are many like that. I don't want to name anything.
Moscow. What we've actually reached a point where I think we agree that it's about the audience. So instead of thanking my fellow panelists first, I'm going to thank you guys, the audience, for being here. Thank you. And thank you to Babe, Laurent, Wash, and the guy on the right.